Okay, let's just dive right into this. I want you to picture a senior management team sitting in a boardroom, intensely debating how to respond to falling profits. You know the scene. One executive wants to close a factory, maybe another wants to cut dividends. Now, as managers or management students, you might look at that room and immediately think the power lies with the person at the head of the table who makes the final call. But I really want to challenge you on that today. Who actually holds the power in that room? Is it just the people who speak the loudest, or is it something else entirely?
We have this idea of visible, formal power, right? The CEO casting the final vote. But then there's hidden power. Think about a junior analyst whose financial forecasts were treated as unquestionable truth weeks before this meeting even happened. Someone, somewhere, decided that falling profits was the central problem, while the impact on the local community was, just summarized in a tiny footnote. The actual situation was completely shaped, long before those executives ever sat down to vote.
So, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely shift your mental model of power. We are moving way beyond that simple, top-down hierarchy chart you're probably so used to staring at, and we're going to uncover the invisible, systemic forces that actually run your organization.
We'll navigate this in 5 quick steps. First, the formal hierarchy myth. Second, hidden levers of power. Third, power embedded in systems. Fourth, the productivity of power. And finally, becoming a reflexive leader. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The formal hierarchy myth, and why your org chart absolutely does not tell the whole story.
As managers, we are naturally comfortable with formal authority, aren't we? We like knowing exactly who has the right to allocate tasks or approve a strategy. But the traditional org chart has massive blind spots. Authority answers who is permitted to decide, sure, but it completely fails to answer how that power is actually exercised, or honestly, if it's even obeyed. A senior executive might have the formal authority, but they depend heavily on specialists who have niche knowledge that they just don't have. They depend on middle managers who have to somehow translate their grand directives into reality. And most importantly, they depend on employees who can choose to comply enthusiastically, minimally, or barely at all. An org chart makes it look like power flows perfectly downward. But in reality, a formally powerful executive often discovers their strategy has completely changed by the time it actually moves through the organization.
Section 2. Hidden levers of power. Resources, agendas, and meaning. So if it's not just about the org chart, where does power actually live? Well, it often lies in resources, agendas, and meaning. Take the sheer power of setting an agenda. Let's say your company is debating a climate strategy. Asking, how can we reduce emissions while protecting margins, leads to a vastly different conversation than asking what business model is compatible with emission reductions. Power is deeply, deeply tied to who frames that starting question. Whoever defines that initial question basically dictates the resulting financial conversation and completely rules out alternative solutions before a vote even happens. Silence in a meeting isn't always agreement, folks. Sometimes it's just a result of an agenda that was carefully structured to exclude certain ideas.
And power isn't just about agendas, it's about making meaning. Say your organization is suddenly facing crazy high employee turnover. Is that because of weak local management, or is it because of uncompetitive pay? Just defining the problem is a massive exercise of power. Interpreting this turnover as a management failure versus a compensation issue distributes responsibility entirely differently. It shapes the resulting organizational truth and ultimately decides where the budget is going to go. The power to categorize is literally the power to act.
Section 3. Power embedded in systems, or what I like to call the invisible machine. Now let's look at how power continues to operate long after the original designers of a system or process have packed up and left the building. This is the invisible machine running in the background of your daily work. Power is so cleverly embedded in incredibly mundane things. Take a platform algorithm acting as a digital supervisor, dictating task allocation without a human manager ever stepping in. Or think about your office design. Who knew seating arrangements could be a political blood sport, right? But the layout literally dictates who gets FaceTime with senior leaders and which groups are kept isolated. Or how about budgeting software? It creates rigid workflows where you absolutely must justify every single expense to a specific department, and no local manager has the authority to bypass it. The system requires it, which makes it feel totally impersonal. But remember, someone, at some point, built those exact constraints.
This quote captures the whole thing perfectly. You literally cannot just stand in front of your team, announce a flashy new priority, and expect genuine change if you leave the old budgets, reporting lines, and technologies perfectly in place.
You have to get in there and rewire the underlying infrastructure that distributes these unseen opportunities and constraints. Otherwise, the old power dynamics are just going to keep flowing right through your shiny new strategy.
Section 4. The productivity of power, generating identity and action. We frequently think of power as a stop sign, don't we? Something that just stops us, limits our freedom, or protects privilege. But as management students quickly learn, power is also highly productive. Thinkers like Michel Foucault and Byung-Chul Han brilliantly illustrate this. Foucault basically argues that power operates through everyday norms and knowledge to actually produce our professional capabilities and our organizational identities. It defines exactly what a normal employee or a high performer looks like. Han takes this even further into the modern workplace, arguing that modern power works most effectively through freedom and the promise of achievement. It doesn't just bark orders at you. It invites you to realize your full potential, to be authentic, or to, build your personal brand.
You may generate more effort than you must. I love that. It perfectly captures why we so willingly participate in these systems. The drive for self-realization, the intense drive to optimize oneself and achieve, is a far more potent form of power than simple top-down coercion. It feels exactly like common sense and personal ambition, but make no mistake, it is fundamentally a system shaping your conduct.
Section 5. Becoming a reflexive leader by applying disciplined doubt.
So how do you actually practically navigate this complex web of hidden influence? Look, you can't just step outside of power, but you can absolutely change how you interact with it by applying what the source calls a disciplined form of doubt. Here is a super practical 3-step toolkit you can use in your daily management. Step 1, map the dependencies. Look way beyond the org chart and ask who actually controls the money, the expertise, or the access to the boss. Step 2, question the agenda. Ask yourself, who defined the problem we're solving today, and what alternatives were ruled out before we even sat down? And step 3, anticipate resistance. Figure out where pushback is likely to emerge, and honestly ask yourself if you've created an environment where it is actually safe for your team to dissent.
Now, recognizing that you are a part of this system doesn't make your leadership manipulative. Not at all. It makes it consequential. Leadership always shapes attention, resources, relationships, and possibilities. Every single time you define a purpose, select a team, or praise a specific behavior, you are actively participating in your organization's distribution of power. A reflexive leader uses this awareness responsibly to protect safety, support continuous learning, and actually challenge the status quo rather than just blindly enforcing it.
I want to leave you with this final provocative question to take right back to your teams. Look closely at your software, your meeting agendas, your performance metrics, and ask, how are decisions, possibilities, and people being shaped right now, and how might they be shaped differently? Because I promise you, once you start looking at your organization through this lens, ordinary organizational life is never, ever going to look the same again. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I seriously challenge you to go find the hidden power in your own workplace today.